Boris Johnson has warned Brits to brace for a second wave of coronavirus today, sparking fears of another national lockdown. Health Secretary Matt Hancock refused to rule out a UK lockdown, describing it as the last line of defence. However, a lengthy full-scale lockdown appears unlikely due to the disastrous economic damage it would cause. One of the options reportedly being considered is a 2-week circuit break shutdown across the country, which would coincide with the autumn half-term in October. Other proposals apparently include potentially asking some hospitality venues to shut, and a national curfew for bars and restaurants, a measure that has just been imposed on the northeast. Here are the answers to your top questions about potential coronavirus measures. What could new measures look like? Face covering requirements and the Rule of 6 limit on social gatherings are examples of existing national rules, so any extra measures will be on top of these. According to the BBC, possible new measures being discussed include asking some hospitality businesses to close or limiting the opening hours of pubs and restaurants. The hospitality sector has already been subject to targeted measures under a local lockdown in areas across the northeast of England, with food and drink restricted to table service only, and venues required to close between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. Similarly, in Bolton, which has the highest number of cases in the country, measures were brought in last week restricting restaurants, cafes, bars, and pubs to takeaway only, and requiring all hospitality venues to close between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. When will this happen, and how long could it last? No decisions are said to have been made, but according to the BBC, new measures could last a few weeks, while the Financial Times, FT, reported a 2-week national lockdown is being proposed by scientists. The FT said the government's Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies, SAGE, have suggested a national lockdown could coincide with schools' October half-term. This would help limit any disruption to children's education, which has already been affected by the pandemic. Could this be a return to full national lockdown? Prime Minister Boris Johnson is said to be very reluctant to place the country under the kind of tight restrictions imposed on the country back in March. Earlier this week, Mr. Johnson described the potential impact of a second national lockdown on the economy as disastrous. A key consideration for the government is balancing the health impacts of a potential second wave of COVID-19 and protecting the economy. But cases are growing. A total of 18,371 new people tested positive for COVID-19 in England in the week to September 9, a rise of 75% in positive cases on the previous week. Earlier this week, Mr. Johnson said the disease was spreading from the young to the more vulnerable elderly, with the rate of cases among the over 80s doubling in just days, and warned that would lead to mortality. How many people could be affected by any new measures? According to the reports, discussions are focusing on national lockdown measures. Coronavirus restrictions are the responsibility of the different nations of the UK, England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, with each country implementing slightly differing measures. Many rules, such as compulsory face coverings on transport, already exist across the UK. Alongside existing national restrictions, some 10 million people in England are already under some form of further local lockdown measures. What is the government saying? Responding to questions from the media on Friday, Mr. Hancock did not rule out a second national lockdown, but indicated the government's preference for local action. He said national measures were the last line of defense against coronavirus, with the government vigilantly monitoring the rising number of cases. Mr. Hancock said it was absolutely critical people followed existing rules and self-isolate if they test positive. He added, "We want to avoid a national lockdown, but we're prepared to do it if we need to."